Welcome back to the KPL podcast. I am your host, Jigisha.
And I am your other host, Shannon. So, Jigisha, I have a confession to make. I've never seen Rear Window.
What?
I know.
Oh, no. A classic Hitchcock film? You missed it?
Yeah, I know. So when we were talking to Riley for this episode, I was like, I know what it's about. Obviously, it's so famous. I kind of know the overall themes of it and everything, but I've never actually seen it. I know everyone's surprised. I've actually only seen one Hitchcock film, and that's The Birds. I know I am like so. Everyone's going to shame me now. I know I need to really get on top of my Hitchcock film watching, but yes, I hope Riley couldn't tell that I didn't know Rear Window.
Well, I will say this. I'm not always a big fan. Like, Birds is not probably one of my favorites for Hitchcock. The best one he's done is Psycho, which is the one I would say you should probably watch that one. If you haven't seen any Hitchcock films, then Psycho is really the one to watch.
I know for sure, right? So, and speaking of Hitchcock and thrillers, this week we do have best-selling and very popular mystery thriller writer Riley Sager on the podcast. And so we have a great interview with him about his new book. And
then we're also going to do a recommendation section on other thriller authors. So Shannon and I have dug into our reading lists and tried to find other authors that do something similar to Riley.
Let's get started. Riley was a great interview. Let's hear what he has to say about his new book.
Our guest today is Riley Sager. His first novel, Final Girls, was a national and international bestseller that has been published in more than 24 countries and won the ITW Thriller Award for Best Hardcover Novel. Sager's subsequent novels, The Last Time I Lied, Lock Every Door, Home Before Dark, received the Crimson Scribe Award by Suspense Magazine. Riley is here to tell us about his latest thriller, The House Across the Lake. Welcome to the show.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about your newest book.
So The House Across the Lake is the short version. The elevator pitch is Rear Window on a Lake. And it's a woman named Casey. She's an actress. She got herself into a bit of bad publicity. And so she's kind of been banished by her mother to the family's lake house in Vermont. And there she meets Tom and Catherine Royce, this glamorous couple who live in the house across the lake. And they're just perfect, this golden couple. But the more Casey learns about them and the more she watches them, because she has a trusty pair of binoculars she uses to spy on them, the more she thinks that maybe there's not as perfect as it seems. And then Catherine vanishes. And Casey thinks Tom did it, and that there's all types of no good things going on at that lake.
Nice. Yeah, I think my first thought was Rear Window as I was reading the synopsis to the book. And I'm a big mystery lover. So one of my favorite tropes is the unreliable narrative. So what made you decide to use this particular trope? And did you find it difficult to write the unreliable narrator?
Yeah, it's one of the weird things where like this kind of Rear Window-esque story has been done many, many times, and it's been done very, very well. And so it's okay, what do I bring to the table that's new and different? And one, like there's a mega twist in this book that kind of upends everything. But also it was, okay, the unreliable narrator, how do I make her my own? And like, what do I do that's fresh with this type of character? And so for Casey, like, I don't really consider her unreliable in the traditional sense. Like, she is not lying to the reader. She's just omitting a whole lot of important details. And so it's like lying by omission, kind of. And I wanted to make her just an absolute train wreck, but a likable train wreck. Like, I do think that she is a likable person, even though she makes many questionable choices. And the best part about writing her was she has like this dry sense of humor. And so she's very witty and she's very funny. And so it was fun to be funny, but also it's a self-defense mechanism covering up like just this deep pain that she harbors.
That's awesome. So it's an unreliable narrator, of a train wreck of a person. I love it. That sounds so awesome. I love those kind of narrators. What type of research did you have to do for this book, if any?
I didn't do any because I got the idea at a lake house in Vermont that just coincidentally is exactly like the lake house in the book and like the lake in the book. Yeah, it was intended to be a vacation. You know, it was middle of the pandemic. It's like, okay, we can't go anywhere really. So let's go to a lake house in Vermont. And while there, like the very first night, I poured myself a bourbon and I sat down on the porch right next to the water and I looked at the houses on the other side of the lake and just started thinking about like, who lives there? What is their life like? What secrets do they have? And so it clicked immediately, like Rear Window on a Lake. That's going to be my next book. And so I spent so much of that week just plotting out the story and just doing research by like soaking in the atmosphere. I took so many pictures, like just random pictures of light fixtures in the house and like the porch and the stairs and the different bedrooms and all of that kind of stuff, just because I knew it was going to be my reference point for what I was eventually going to write.
Yeah, I mean, I could see a lake house being just the perfect setting for it. I mean, you've got a lot of different types of books you could do. It could be, a romance, a mystery, even horror. So it's got a lot of different directions it could be taken.
Yeah, and and actually, like, I kind of mix a little bit of all of those things together in this book, where there is some romance and there is some just outright scary stuff. And so, like, lakes are generally not scary per se, but there's something creepy about a lake. Like,
I agree.
It's they're like I've Hollywood has come calling for this book, and it's been amazing. And so I got to talk to like some directors and some producers, and like one of them said, like, we all agree that like lakes are the scariest body of water, right? And I'm like, yes, they are, truly.
They are, for sure. I completely agree with that. Lakes are the scariest body of water.
And I think it's because you don't know what's down there. Like, you cannot see it. And so I made the lake in the book extra dark and extra deep, just to give that sense of like, ooh, what's hiding beneath the surface here.
Now, I've read that you're a fan of classic movies. So is there a film that you would recommend pairing with this novel? Now, I know you said Rear Windows with On a Lake, but was there anything else you would recommend?
Well, yeah, absolutely, Rear Window. And then there's another movie that, influenced it, but that's the spoiler part.
Oh, okay.
It's not as well known as it should be. Like, it's a very underrated film. And if I say the title, some people who've seen it will be like, oh, okay. So I try not to say the title, but yeah, and your listeners are like, just tell us the damn movie. But but yeah, there was another movie that, but mostly Rear Window. Just, read the book and then pop in Rear Window and have a good time.
Awesome. Well, now everybody, after they read the book, will be trying to figure out what movie you're talking about.
they will, yeah. And that's like, I've done interviews before where it like I can't say the movie, and I know it's frustrating people right now, but I like people to be surprised. Like, this is the book where it's probably your best not knowing anything about it when you start it. But obviously then there's nothing to talk about. And so I can't do like
right.
a book tour promotional cycle being like, I can't tell you anything about this book.
That's a lot of times that's what happens with mystery and thriller books. I mean, you don't want to give too much away, or then the whole enjoyment of the novel is ruined. So
yeah, but this one's been especially hard to talk about. It's like, and when it gets like someone on Twitter like actually tweeted something, and I was like, hi, could you please delete that tweet? It's a little bit spoilery. And they were so nice. They did. And I thank them.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So your novels are famously twisty. And of course, The House Across the Lake is no different. How difficult is it to write a successful twist?
It is super difficult. One, because it's expected. Like, if I wrote a book and there wasn't a twist, readers would probably come to my house with pitchforks. And so like, there needs to be a good twist. But also, you need to play fair with the readers. It can't come out of left field. You have to plant the clues to give them at least a chance of figuring things out. But you can't make it too easy for them to figure it out, because then it becomes boring. So it's this fine line that you need to walk every single time. Like, make the clues, but hide them. But then when you get to the twist, let the reader think like, yeah, of course, it's this, and I should have seen this coming based on this. And so it's a very delicate balance. And sometimes it's hard to get right, and it requires some retooling or revision or just complete gutting of the novel and putting things, replacing stuff. Every book is different, but that is the hardest part of the job, is coming up with a satisfying twist that still shocks people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could imagine. So are you, do you plot everything out, or are you a pantser?
I have to plot everything out. Like, in order to get the twist to work that well, you do need to know when to lay the groundwork for things that come later. And so that's why plotting to me is invariable. It's so helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Any hints to what might be coming out next?
I can't say. Like, it's one, because I'm still writing it. Like, I'm a little bit behind on my deadline. Not a lot, but a little bit. But I find that when I talk about an idea, it tends to, like, you see all the holes in it. Like, you're like, oh, this is my great idea for my next book. And then you tell someone and they give you this blank stare, like, oh, that's it. And so it's better to, like, not talk about it and not have anyone else's opinion sort of like going through my head when I'm writing it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah, for sure. You're just like, I thought it was a fantastic idea. Why are you looking at me like that?
Yeah, why are you not impressed? You should be applauding right now. And so it's better to just not talk about it, just get it written, and then let my editor be the one deciding, like, I'm impressed, or it needs work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've had both situations with my editor where there is like, genius, we're done, it's perfect, and this is good. And I know when I get that, like, this is ellipses good, we're like, okay, there's a lot of work still left to do.
Yeah. So for our last question, we do ask this of most of our authors. What are you reading right now, or what would you recommend we read?
I'm between books right now because when I'm writing, I don't read as much. And so, like, it always cuts into my reading time. The last book that I finished, and it was super good, is Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And it's fantastic. And there are pictures. There are lots and lots of illustrations. And it's just a wonderful, creepy book about a nanny and this kid that she's taking care of, who draws pictures of his imaginary friend, who is creepy as hell. So
sounds good. Nanny and Kids, another good, like, mystery plot device, just to, like, get the story set up. It's just, yeah,
really enjoyable book.
Our guest today is Riley Sager. His novel, The House Across the Lake, is available right here at the Kirkwood Public Library and wherever thrilling, twisty books are sold. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thanks for having me.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. It's Jigisha jumping in here to give you the podcast Summer Reading Challenge secret word. The word is ocean. Once again, the word is ocean. Thanks for listening, and back to the show. I am never going to look at a vacation at the lake the same way now after this interview.
He is so right that lakes are creepy. So, I mean, like, I love lakes. They're pretty and everything, but swimming in them is I've never been one for, like, wanting to venture farther than probably waist deep into a lake, just because, yeah, they're creepy. So perfect setting for his mystery novel.
Yeah, definitely. Very murky, and I don't like it when I can't see my feet.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I don't understand people who are okay with being in the water and not being able to see the bottom. But on that note, with mystery thrillers, I think we each have a couple of other thriller writers that we think you might like. Did you want to go first, Jigisha?
Sure. So a while back, I discovered this author. Her name is Shari LaPena. And I kind of binged on her books because I got sucked in. I thought, wow, I really love these books. They're so much fun to read. They're very fast paced. They're thrillers. And one of my rules when I really like a thriller writer is that I can't figure out who they the killer is, basically. So usually, I read so many of these that I've gotten to the point where I can, understand how the writer's written things and can kind of figure out, I'm like, okay, here's, I'm assuming this is the killer. Shari LaPena is very good at coming up with a twist, just like Riley. And so I read 3 of her books. I read Someone We Know, An Unwanted Guest, and The Couple Next Door. Of the 3, she's got a few others that I haven't gotten to yet, but my favorite one was An Unwanted Guest because it was a locked room mystery, also another trope that I really love. This is a group of people stuck in a snowstorm in a little bed and breakfast place, and people start dying. So it's like, who's the killer?
Ruining the bed and breakfast experience with murder.
Yeah, so bed and breakfast is another thing that I can't look at the same anymore because lakes and bed and breakfast.
As Jigisha goes through her reading history, she's like, man, I just can't go on vacation anymore because all this murder could happen. Yeah, that's hilarious. So, well, my first recommendation might be familiar to a lot of people, but actually, both of my recommendations are YA mystery thriller writers. My first one is Karen M. McManus. She is a best-selling author, very popular, especially with the teens, but even adults can enjoy her books. Her first book, One of Us is Lying, was actually made into I think it's on Peacock, a TV series. So she's already ventured into the land of having her books adapted to television. My favorite of hers is called Two Can Keep a Secret. It's a standalone. I believe it was their second book. And it's about this girl, and she moves to this small town America that her mom grew up there. And when her mom and her twin sister were teens, her mom's twin sister disappeared. And they moved back there, and she kind of realizes that the town may seem perfect, but a lot of people are hiding secrets. It goes along, and of course there's danger, and then she'll eventually figure out what has been going on in the town all these years with its dark underbelly, even though it looks like a picture perfect little American town. So
another to add to my list to avoid.
Small towns, yes. So that one, I loved that one, but she has so many great books out. One of Us is Lying, like I said, was turned into a TV show, and then she released One of Us is Next, which is kind of the sequel. She releases a book like every year now, so there's plenty of cool thrillers with interesting dark twists at the end that you can enjoy from her. So that's Karen M. McManus.
So now, did she write a series character? So do they have reoccurring characters, or these are all standalones?
So most are standalones. The sequel to One of Us is Lying, One of Us is Next, it has like a new cast of characters, but a couple of the ones from the first book feature in it. So it's not like she has a detective or anything that she's written. It's always like a new cast of characters who are figuring out, is one of them a murderer, or is there a murderer, or what's going on? So
yeah, Shari LaPena's books are the same. It's a whole new cast of people, so it's not they're all standalones. It's not part of a series or anything, any of her books.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, I think you could probably read One of Us is Next alone without having read One of Us is Lying. But yeah, and then her other ones, as far as I know, are standalones. So it's kind of nice. You can just let's see which one is in the library and pick it up and read it. So
yeah,
and not have to worry about being lost.
Yeah. My next one is actually a series character. These are books by Alex Cava. The series character is an FBI agent named Maggie Odell. She is a profiler as part of her job, and so she's solving crimes or solving a lot of what she does is hunt down serial killers.
Yeah, and she's a profiler, kind of so she works at the BAU, right?
Yep, exactly. The BAU.
I used to watch a lot of Criminal Minds.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite shows. I probably rewatched that multiple times.
Yeah. So I was like, oh yeah, so she's a profiler, so she works here because I used to watch this show a lot. Plus, I'm a big true crime fan, so But yeah, so it's a series, and she's a profiler. Is there like a different serial killer every book, or?
Yeah, I mean, usually there's a different killer she runs across. It's sometimes a serial killer, sometimes just a bad guy killing people for, personal reasons. And so it just depends. But there was one case where it involved a guy who releases a deadly virus out into the world. And she ends up in different locations. So Alex Cava does a really good job of keeping it fresh. So you're not feeling like you're reading the same thing over and over again. It's not formulaic, as a lot of times happens with series written books. So.
Oh, nice. Well, and it's cool if they're in different locations, because a lot of times with the series, it's like they're a cop or they're a detective in one town and it's in the same place. So that's nice if she's a profiler and they move everywhere.
Yeah. Of course, it's also kind of funny because anytime she goes on vacation or she goes to a conference, she ends up finding killers. So that's always,
of course,
a little reality suspension there, but yeah.
Yeah. So awesome. My next suggestion, it's also not she doesn't write series books. They're always standalones as far as I know. Her name is Courtney Summers, the author. And she writes fantastic, like slow burn psychological mystery books. Her breakout hit, which is the one that it's one of my favorite books I've ever read, actually. It's called Sadie. And it's interesting because she writes it like there's part of the story is told from Sadie's point of view. And Sadie hasn't had an easy life. Her mom has been in and out of the picture. And so she's mostly raised her little sister herself. And then Maddie is found dead and her entire world just crumbles. And because the cops don't seem like they care, she kind of goes off to find the killer herself. And that's part of the book. It's told from Sadie's point of view. And it's kind of like the past. And then the other part is it's a podcast. There's this podcast host who hears about Sadie's story at a gas station, overhears about it, and decides to investigate what happened to her because Sadie's been missing since she went off on this quest. And so it's really interesting to have each chapter being comparing the past from Sadie's point of view to what the podcast host is finding out and interviewing different people and everything. So it's actually really well written and very interesting to see it from both of those point of views and how they come together. I really loved Sadie. And then Courtney Summers, she also seems to be releasing a book every year now.
So it's interesting to do it from two different perspectives like that. I think true crime podcasts have really become popular. And so using that as sort of part of the storytelling is really a new and interesting idea.
Yeah, exactly. And then another one that she has out is called The Project. And it's about another girl trying to investigate this cult that her sister has joined. She has a great writing style and her topics that she chooses are always really interesting. And then, she's really good at building up the suspense and you really don't know what's happening until the end. So Courtney Summers, I would definitely recommend her if you like thrillers, especially getting into the relationships and psychology of the characters.
All right. Well, that's our list. So listeners, do you have any suggestions for us, as we always ask? If you do, you can write to us at our email address, which is podcast@kirkwoodpubliclibrary.org.
And I'm sure you do have, if you're a thriller or mystery fan, Jagisha and I would love to hear from you if you have any suggestions, because we both like reading those. And so I decided, I know I just admitted at the beginning of the podcast that I've only seen one Hitchcock movie, but I'm going to quote Alfred Hitchcock to end this podcast because it just seems appropriate for the whole thing. Give them pleasure, the same pleasure they have when they wake up from a nightmare. Alfred Hitchcock.
Very nice.
Yes. Exactly. So that was his entire view, and I think it applies to anybody who writes or reads mystery thrillers. So you take pleasure when you're waking up from a nightmare. Join us next week when we welcome author Zoe Sivak to the podcast to talk about her new book, Mademoiselle Revolution.